Hello, I'm Tan the Tambio TC channel. I want to make a couple of videos in the future with site, so I'm finally can focus on new read-alongs as well as the old ones again. I got Three Body Problem and such I showed last time, so there will be more. And what I'm talking about today, I also want to make two videos going over movies, shows, and maybe cartoons and anime. I'll make two separate videos, like my favorites as well as my favorites those years. Kind of go as like a movie or show of the year for me. And do the same with the video games. I'm going to be looking through a list of different years of gaming, movies, and so on, writing them down and then going through them for a couple of videos in the future. That just sounds like something fun that I wanted to do for myself. And hopefully you guys enjoy it. And I'm sure everything will be just like my personal opinions, of course. Everybody has different opinions. It's always cool to see what everybody else thinks and what everybody else's favorites are down in the comments below. I do want to give opinions later in the future of the latest Pinocchio, as well as She Hulk and Rings of Power and such. Let's just say briefly in this video, they're not so great. But yeah, I do have to contribute one thing to She-Hulk. I do understand all the criticism, and I've already made a message on Angry Joe's first episode video on She-Hulk, but I think the main problem why people have it hard for She-Hulk is it's kind of the same deal as the Halo show. It's like this is the first time a character like this is being adapted. I know somebody who I have a friend. At least I used to have a friend. He's not. I don't do very well with him anymore. We had a lot of our differences, but I know he was a big fan of She-Hulk, and for this to be the first time we experienced She-Hulk on the big screen kind of is a little disappointing in the same way that experiencing Halo for the first time in a big budget show is as sucky as it ended up being. So I think that's probably one of the things people are looking at. There's probably other things, some stupid, some legitimate, who knows. I wouldn't doubt either. But yeah, but I understand people's frustration from that point of view, if that is their point of view, that is. As well as whatever, like, legitimate, like, criticisms and such. But yeah, other than that, this is just going over my favorite authors. I'm going to do this very briefly. These are not when I say underrated, I mean like they don't have much in terms of television or movies. They didn't make it as big as, say, Lord of the Rings or The Witcher and such, but they're books that I absolutely freaking love, and I would love to talk about them here. And I'm kind of glad they haven't had their own Hollywood movies or shows, because they won't be tainted by the stupidity that we've seen many times of Hollywood lately. I just don't like some of the unprofessional celebrities and directors, writers, producers, and so on and so forth, all the stupid unprofessional things they've been doing lately. So yeah, let's get into this. I think my first author will have to be Morgan Llewellyn. So there was this one book. I used to read books from my mom's shelf. I'd ask her from her bookshelf. I'd ask her, can I read this or that? She said, sure. And there's this one book that even my other family members, like my uncles and such, kept saying was like the best book they ever read. They'd even go as far to say it was better than Lord of the Rings in some cases. I'm like, whoa, that's a bit far. And while I still agree Lord of the Rings is a bigger deal, goddamn, this book actually got me emotional, and it was just freaking cool, and I would love to see a big screen adaptation, and this is probably the best way the story has been told of this legendary hero. It's legendary Irish hero, written by Morgan Llewellyn, Red Branch. I freaking love this book. the character in this book is this is probably the best way it's written. I always get mad when I see like Smite or other games and such like say his name wrong, or at least according to what I've come to know, because it's, as it says in here, it's Cuchulainn. People pronounce it like Cuchulainn. No, the C is silent next to the H. And then there's like Cuchulainn, and it's like, shut the hell up. I hate the pronunciations I've heard in different like games and so on. I saw they put the character in Smite, and I hated the way they pronounced his name whenever he was announced. I gotta shave soon and cut my hair. But yeah, this is a great story on the Hound of Ulster. I love how stoic this character is, and he gets this powerful trident-like weapon that you can see on the front here. He barely uses this thing. As a matter of fact, I think it's used against him at one point. I'm not sure. I haven't read it in a long time though. But I love this book from when I last read this, and I still think these books are brilliant because it's not the only great book. There's Grania. I have a couple others here. This might not be the order these go in. So you got Pride of the Lions, or Pride of Lions. Then this is either its sequel or the first book, Lion of Ireland. Then you got shorter books too. You got like Strongbow. You got Druids. Not the best cover. Kind of looks like Gandalf on the front there with like a crow on his back. And then you got the Bard. But yeah, this is such a great... I loved Silverhand too. I read Silverhand, and I think that's the second book. There's a first book. I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, there's a lot of fantastic books from Morgan Llewellyn. Always found her stuff super underrated. Brilliant author. Love it. And next, I love, like, I learned a lot about, like, Irish myths and legends and such, and just folklore and all that from these books. I really love them, and the way that Morgan Llewellyn tells them is so awesome. Freaking probably my favorites. They can be poetic at times too. They're just really good, really well written. Just beautiful. Once again, poetic. And I get to learn quite a bit about these legends, and I think they're told in like the best way possible here. But yeah, and there are things she does, more historical stuff too. So yeah, this is fantastic. So you're either in it for fantasies, legends, stories, or some other historical thing. Alright, or mythology. And then my next author, is this the... Nope, that's the second one. I'll show that one just a bit. You guys have seen these though. I am going to be picking up the individual books of this series so I can have two different collections, and I am picking up the new one that's coming out. I'm glad there are still books coming out from this guy, but I have to give it to Michael Moorcock. What an unfortunate last name. But man, this is such... I love this series. I remember reading these like off-white books that my mom had. There were these little paperback, mass market paperback books. And they were off-white. They had like Elric and a couple other characters on the front cover. They really caught my eye. I love these covers too. A lot of these are based on some of the older covers, like especially this one. This one's great. I love the colors. But man, like, it's a short... They're short books, unless you combine them like these. And there are other side stories within, I think, the same universe. I think, is Cormac one of his characters? I can't remember there's another hero character of his, and this series just feels original because you don't see many stories like this, with such a unique and interesting world that I definitely feel like influenced The Witcher and even Game of Thrones to an extent. And it very much feels kind of like those, but shorter. But man, I love the fantasy world. I love the world building. I love the characters. Not always the brightest characters at times, but man, are they original feeling. Is like feels like a book that's still original even today. We've had so many like anti-heroes and stuff, but like I feel like this anti-hero especially like kind of stands out. And man, it's just become one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. And I definitely recommend reading it. I always get sad when I see like The Witcher and stuff, and I'm like, I feel like that took a lot from Elric, whether you believe it or not. And like I just wish that Elric had more readers, more fame, like what The Witcher has. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad because then I know, seeing how Hollywood has treated everything else, I don't think they do Elric justice. They would probably ruin it. Same with Morgan Llewellyn. Force their whatever agendas into their crap, whether they do that stuff or not. They still mess around in other ways too. Even if you don't, even if it's not stuff like that, or you don't believe like that's a problem. Even though that's through like motivation and the like thinking process, as well as how many people kind of group together on those ideas. So it's not really a hard thing to come by or see a collection of people. Like if a collection of people can come together with different ideas or ideologies and whatever, then I'm sure they do that stuff too. It's not doubtful. Matter of fact, I remember some YouTubers had brought out that when Hollywood was looking for certain products and people to be associated with certain products, they have come out in the open saying that certain like political views and stuff have influenced, or like they say that's where the money making is, and they focused on that. So I wouldn't doubt that stuff, but that's not what we're talking about, and I hate talking about that crap anyways. I just, whenever I think of something like if one of these were to be adapted, they probably do that kind of dumb crap in it, sadly. So whatever. But yeah, I've always loved the Michael Moorcock books. I felt like they were big influences for a lot of things. I think there are even there's even like books by him that were influences for the Warhammer stuff. I'm not sure. I'd have to look back at that. I just remember watching some videos talking about the background of Michael Moorcock and his books. And I think even he himself in a interview was talking about that too. So, yeah. And now the last series. Not going to show all the books. I have way too many of these, especially now I got even more of these, and I'm going to get more too in the future. But the Elf Quest, and there are books without pictures by the author, which I think the writer is Richard. I wouldn't doubt it if Wendy Penny had some influence in the writing too, though. Definitely. But Wendy is really known for her artwork, whether it be the covers or on the inside of the books. And I absolutely love the art style. It's one of the most unique art styles that I've never seen much take from, but I do feel there's influences from it. As well as other things that it does. Everybody's practically beautiful in these books. And I've actually met Richard. He's like the one author I've actually gotten to meet. I haven't gotten to meet Wendy yet, though, which sucks. But he has said if Wendy was ever around, she would love to meet me. And They might have them around sometime because they wanted them to come by because they have dropped by before um, in my town at my comic book shop because they both got to sign the comic books that I had. And, but I never actually got to meet Wendy herself, though, sadly. But that was great. Like, I had some signed comics. I got to take some pictures with Richard, but I never got to meet or take pictures with Wendy. I have 2 pictures. One's stored on my iPad. I have to get a new charger for that, though, and then transfer the picture over to one of my other devices. And then I have a physical picture. The problem is it didn't come out very well. It was too dark. And we were hoping we'd run into Richard again sometime. We ran into him in a Stop and Shop, going shopping. And we decided to take a picture with him there. So that was great. And it was, of course, much lighter there than it was outside in the dark. I think we were in front of an Indian restaurant when we ran into him. It was such an honor to meet Richard. He was a funny guy too. We talked a little bit about me, my mom, and my grandmother. She got to meet him more than me, actually, because she worked for the town at the time. And he would drive through the areas where they're working on the roads and stuff, and she was out front dealing with traffic, and she'd run into him with his car. So she's ran into him more than I have. I think I've only run into him twice, where she's run into him 3-4 times. But he doesn't know, I don't think he knows that my grandmother sadly passed away. I don't know if I want to break that to him. I'll probably tell him if I ever meet him face to face, and if he even remembers me. I'm sure he will remember, especially somebody named Tam. But I'm sure he's run into other people named Tam too. But yeah, just such a brilliant author and such a brilliant artist. My mom has had some of the books that don't have pictures other than the covers, and used to dabble in reading those. And of course, reading a lot of the comic books. Man, I love the art and I love the writing. Such an interesting, immersive fantasy world. And I'm still reading the newer books. I got involved in some of the audio series, whether on Spotify or when they live stream it, the audio movies. Just great. Like, if you can watch those or get involved, I'd have to find the link. Because, yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, like, those are my 3 favorite authors that don't have, like, big movies or shows or video games and such on them. Though some of them might have almost had some of those at one point, but something or another has prevented them from going forward. I know that Elric almost had a game, and they're talking about a show maybe, but like, we don't know how long that'll take or if it'll get canceled out of nowhere. And the game was canceled. I think it did become, or at least was the influence for the later Legacy of Kain games, which I absolutely love those games. I can kind of see the influence. Like, Kain himself kind of looks like Elric. But yeah, such a good series too. But that's also underrated. Great series. But yeah, I think those are the only authors I would have to talk about. Many of the other authors I would love to talk about have already been talked to death, and have also have their share of books, prints, movies, shows, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I'm glad. I do want to mention, when it comes to, mention Lord of the Rings real quick. When it comes to Lord of the Rings, if I wanted a show, sadly, I don't care about the Rings of Power, but mostly because the time period and some of the stuff they're basing it off of, and the fact that you shouldn't even focus on lore anymore because they're honestly not being true to the lore. But I mean, it's called Lord of the Rings, so it's like, why would you make something called Lord of the Rings if you're not going to be true to the stuff of a man who has passed away quite a while back? That's kind of being disgraceful and disgusting. And they're certainly being disgraceful and disgusting. You can enjoy whatever you want, but I think on the basis of just how unprofessional, childish, and stupid this company is, I don't want to support them on just that basis alone. I don't care if the show is genuinely good. I'm not supporting people who are being unprofessional assholes. That is not something I want to support, especially in the future. Like the worst thing about these people though is that like with most other situations, at least like even with like Ryan Johnson and Star Wars, they mostly attack people after the films were already released. Sometimes. um and I think even Ghostbusters, like that's the same thing. The Rings of Power, however, they attacked people like crazy before it released and after, and it just keeps getting worse. They're being so childish and unprofessional, and they need to get their crap together. They're not doing well in general. Am I happy about that? Yes, but at the same time, we shouldn't have even come to this in the first place, so you should have been more professional, and you should have done your job better. Because your job clearly was not done well enough when you are harassing people and making some of the worst promotional material ever. Like, who came up with the promotional material for that? It was absolutely awful. But yeah, if I wanted a Lord of the Rings thing, it would be more on the first age. Do you know how many cool ass things there are during the first age? Frickin' the trees being attacked by a giant spider god and frickin' Morgoth. Almost a David and Goliath like situation with Morgoth fighting an elf. He's like freaking 10 times his freaking size. I love the images of him next to him as they fight. It's freaking hilarious. And I love there's freaking dragons, all sorts of cool stuff. The freaking Balrog army, Morgoth in general, the music of Aenor. No, I think the Aenor are the race that like Gandalf and all that are, and even Sauron. They're like different ranks or different type of Aenor. But yeah, there's just some really interesting stuff from the first age that is much more worth it than what we're seeing here with all these original characters. And the funny thing is, like, they're blaming us for being racist and stuff, even though nothing being complained about is of race. If anything came close to the look of a character, they would most likely complain about the hair. I've complained about the hair. Like, why do some of those elves have like the kind of razor shaved head? Who has an electric razor in that time period? Seriously. It just baffles me. But yeah, it's just really stupid. And then there's like haircuts that look so similar, like Celebrimbor and Elrond have such similar hair, except like one's older than the other. Like the clothing has that problem of either looking like my grandmother's clothing from her closet that they're wearing, like Celebrimbor is wearing, or it's too complex in the same way that my friend hated the Michael Bay Transformers movies with the too much complexity going on with how they transform and look. I kind of feel that with the armor, or it looks cheap at times. And then there's the fact that a lot of the orcs don't have much variety to their design. They all look kind of the same with their armor and their faces and eyes and all that for the most part. There's some differences, but not much variation between them. If you take pictures of a lot of the orcs or goblins, orcai in general, there's so many different looking orcai, from eye color to even skin, and like some of their like these weird pus and all these like ugly just some really ridiculous designs that are so cool but like even disgusting. And I love it. There's so much variety there in those freaking films, but like this is lacking in a lot of that. then some of the acting is either stale, or the characters are written with almost CW like dialogue, or it's too boring. I wouldn't subject anybody to that. Or they're just not grabbing me. There's no real hook I care about. I don't even know what the plot is. I'm already reviewing it. Might as well. And yeah, you're most likely to complain about that stuff rather than anything else. And then, of course, they've already messed up the lore. It doesn't even matter now. And the effects may look good. I hate that one city looks like just a copy of Minas Tirith. It looks terrible. This is really dumb. And unless that is Minas Tirith, then I'm being dumb. But whatever. If it's not, then that's a problem. If it is, then okay, we'll let you get away with that. And trying to, like, I just don't like some of the romances between some of the characters. Some bad choreography, like why is Galadriel swinging her sword around forever while there's a freaking troll? It's like standing there beating the crap out of her guys. It's like they're taking forever and they want to watch their own men get completely battered before they actually do something. Just really terrible things in general. The characters aren't very likable. They range from stupid to rude. And then there's there was something else I had a problem with. Well, besides the fact the lack of story, there's also dialogue. I always hated this about Zack Snyder movies, but I hate that kind of dialogue that thinks it's saying something meaningful or like trying to say something big, but it really isn't. And it's one of the reasons I wasn't a big fan of Man of Steel and stuff, is those movies felt like they were stroking themselves with their dialogue, thinking that they were saying something bigger than they actually were and trying to be more meaningful, but in reality it was just a bunch of gibberish. And I feel a lot of that type of dialogue in this, and it sucks to listen to. There's some good things about the show, like the visuals. I think some of the characters look fine, but other than that, And we didn't get our bearded dwarves. We actually had a bearded dwarf, kinda, in The Hobbit. I've actually watched the Hobbit movies recently, and I don't hate them as much as I used to. I still don't think they're masterpieces, and they have problems. Even that annoying guy that's in the third movie, he's really only in it for such a short time, and it's really just the third movie that, like, you want to watch out for his character. And otherwise, if you can find the cut down version of the film, that's a much better version. And even with some of the ridiculous designs in those films, like, I at least think it has more variety still, and diverse, ironically, designs and such, and characters, where the show, ironically, once again, need to play that Palpatine how ironic scene, where it doesn't feel quite as diverse. A lot of the characters don't feel like they have their own personality, and they feel the same. It really sucks. Or they don't have a personality. They have a lack of a personality. So, yeah. Sorry, this video went on longer than I thought it was going to be. Just went into kind of a short rant. Short. Saying that, that's not true. But I'll see you guys next time. That's all I have to say on that. I just think She Hulk's getting a little dumber, and what I said earlier about She Hulk, I think that's the reason, like, for me personally too, like, why I don't like this She Hulk is I don't think this is like the first time we're getting her adapted to the films or the show, and it's not a good representation in my eyes, or a good version in the same way Halo show was. It's probably not nearly as bad as the Halo show, but it's not great either. And yeah, that's just my general consensus on that. I do have more I would add to that, but I don't want to. I do have more to add to Pinocchio, because I thought the Pinocchio movie wasn't terrible, but I didn't think it was great either. And after I watched the old one right next to it and was like, the original Pinocchio wasn't a big favorite of mine, but watching it again and this movie, I actually appreciate it and like it way more. And there are a lot of things that the new one misrepresents or ruins, uh, or has just terrible jokes. I don't think I laughed once in the new remake, so yeah. So I'll see you guys next time. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye!